Back with you on the next round. Big SEC weekend, some rivalry games. Sort of a pseudo rivalry in basketball, I believe, because of the Pearls' history in Knoxville. But we got a big one down on the Plains as well with College Game Day there, Tennessee and Auburn tomorrow.
Dane Bradshaw, SEC Network analyst. You'll see him at the Texas A&M game over the weekend. But obviously he knows Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee very well. What is up, Dane? How are you?
Hey, guys, I'm doing well. Great to talk with you again.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you coming back on. Let's start with that Tennessee-Auburn game, your alma mater there, and you know how personal that is. You know the Pearls well from your days in Knoxville, and it does take on a little bit of a different feel with Bruce Pearl going against a place he used to coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think I saw Coach Pearl's quotes. I think he said something to the effect of, look, I want to beat Tennessee because they're a team standing in our way, essentially, of an SEC title. They're a great program. It'd be a big quality win. But I think whether you're somebody that transferred away or you're a coach going against your former school, there's always a little bit of extra edge there. But look, they're not going to prepare any differently, any harder. I do think a win against your former team always maybe has you open up an extra beer instead of just one or two maybe at the end of the night. That's just me.
So we have Stevens on the show every week with us, and I think you played. Was he not a teammate of yours?
He was. I believe he was a redshirt freshman or walking on with us my senior year.
Okay.
Yeah, and he would work out with us even my junior year. He was a senior at West High School there.
So, you know, the assumption is one day Stephen's going to have an opportunity to maybe be a head coach, you know, maybe take over this program. From what you know from Stephen, what do you think that looks like?
Really underrated coach. I'm not just saying that because I know the Pearl family extremely well, but I've seen him grow over the years. Extremely smart. Anybody that thinks he's just coach's son is an idiot, to be honest with you. I don't think there's too many out there that assume that anymore, but I've seen his scouts. I've seen how well he prepares. He was always extremely smart, too. I mean, he got into the rotation at Tennessee because of his knowledge of the game plan, the scouting report. He's grown up in the film room. And Coach Pearl adjusts, year to year, and he can, you talk about having a modern basketball approach. But they were doing some modernized stuff before that was even a term back in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Stephen grew up watching those things. I mean, I still see them run plays for Janai Broome that maybe they ran for me, and that's why they're number one in the country as opposed to, unranked. But, so anyway, he's phenomenal, and he's got a great rapport with the players as well. And obviously had a front row seat there to Coach Pearl and all the X's and O's. I think just as a staff, and you always want, a lot of coaches talk about, hey, look, we're best when we're not calling as many plays. They want a free-flowing offense, and I get that. But I've really enjoyed seeing Coach Pearl call so many plays because he's just a master at it. It's kind of like an offensive coordinator that just wants to let the quarterback call the coverages. But if the offensive coordinator is really good at it, then you might need to step in and call a few. And I think Pearl's had a tremendous balance there with Stephen's help.
I just came off seeing Vandy and Alabama play each other in Tuscaloosa. How did Vandy beat Tennessee? I mean, that team doesn't look talented enough, even on their home floor, to beat a Tennessee team with that backcourt. How is that possible? What goes wrong for Tennessee when they lose these games?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's gone wrong with Tennessee on some of those games is Chaz Lanier, their best sharpshooter, his confidence has been wavering a little bit. Bad news for Auburn fans. I think he got that back the other night against Mississippi State. He's going to come around those picks ready to shoot the ball. He was a little bit in Rick Barnes' doghouse for passing up some shots, and I think that made him a little bit hesitant and just question certain reads and things like that. So that's been an issue, is where when Chaz Lanier is not their primary leading scorer, I think Zakai Ziegler has to take on too much of a scoring role at point guard. I think he's best as a 10-point, 7-assist guy. I don't think you want necessarily him scoring 18 points, 5 assists if you're Tennessee. Even if it adds up to the same total, it's not the same flow and rhythm that they have there. Secondly, I think Tennessee's, they don't have much depth at the 5 spot. They had a couple guys transfer out last year. They did bring some in, but they lost a big man, J.P. Estrella, earlier in this year to a foot injury for the season. and he was going to be their best low post scorer. They still find ways to get alley-oop dunks to a guy named Felix Okpara, and Cade Phillips is a tough kid that comes in as well. But this is not a Tennessee team that's just going to out-muscle you down low in the post. And I thought Vanderbilt actually brought some physicality to them down low. So the way y'all's bigs have stepped up with Janai Broom's absence, I think this is a game where you sit there and say, I think they can hold their own. I don't know if they're going to win that matchup necessarily, but it's not one where you say, oh boy, this is the game that we really miss Janai Broom. As great as he is, I just don't think that's Tennessee's strength down low.
Dane Bradshaw is with us, SEC Network. Alabama plays host to LSU. The Crimson Tide has scored 100-plus in back-to-back games at Kentucky and at home against that Vanderbilt team you were just discussing. They score in the 90s, it seems like, every week unless they're playing Ole Miss. What has Nate Oates done this year with that rotation that has impressed you? When you watch Alabama play now, I think you were on the Ole Miss game, so you caught a bad night there, but you've seen more than that. What have you seen with all that talent that Nate Oates has done that has impressed you?
Really, for him to score at such a high rate without a great shooting team. Like that, they are way better from two than they are three, and they get into their motions and their sets so quickly and play with such great pace. They cut with great speed and with, as Coach Pearl used to always say, like, play with purpose. They play with purpose on every possession, whether that guy's getting the ball or not. He knows he's making a cut to open up the backside or whatever it is for his teammate. And they've just really got a well-oiled machine there. I will say, I think one thing Ole Miss did was they said, hey, look, you're better from two than three. We're going to sag off a little bit. And Ole Miss has a unique style. They kind of do this no-middle defense and keep you on the sideline. But usually that opens up some skip passes and other things. I thought they just did a terrific job of packing it in the paint, having really active hands, and they flustered Alabama. And then, of course, the Tide corrected things. They went up to Kentucky, who's not as good defensively. But to me, if you got to pick your poison, it's, hey, we're not leaving Alabama just wide open from three, but let's see if we can bait some of their guys that are shooting, in that 32% range or less and see how many threes they can take. Ordinarily, you'd say, look, if Alabama's getting over 50% of their shots from three, we've done a bad job because they're so good. But I think this year, that's a stat you'd be okay with if you're an opposing coach and take your chances, even though three's worth more than two. I think if you can take away that drive and free throw line.
Dane, obviously, Mark Sears is one of the best guards in all of college basketball, and he's obviously the alpha of this team, kind of their closer. But if you ask 10 Alabama fans, who is that number two guy? Like, who needs to be the big compliment? You probably would get 4 or 5 different answers. If you were looking at this team, because I know we talked about this a couple of days ago, who we think the number two guy is that has got to be there night in, night out. But for you, who is it?
Grant Nelson. He's their glue guy. He's the reason, to me, when he stepped up his game in the NCAA tournament, a huge primary reason why they got to the Final Four. They've had to put him in some tough spots, though. I think he's best as a four. When they tend to get beat up a little bit, it's when Grant Nelson and Cliff Amori, they're a little bit light for 5 men. And it's not that their effort isn't there, but sometimes they're just giving up 20, 30 pounds down low, and they can get in foul trouble. And I think that is a guy in a matchup night in, because you saw him against Andrew Carr. It's like, hey, Andrew Carr at Kentucky, Grant Nelson in Alabama, as good as Carr is, you go into that game as an Alabama fan like, hey, you know what? I think we can be equal to or better right there. And that's not always the case depending on who the opponent is and the depth. And, I know y'all Auburn fans hate to hear it, but Holloway's been shooting lights out for Alabama, and they've really needed it because that injury to Latrell Wrightsell, he was over 40%. He was clearly their best three-point shooter. To me, he was the number two guy in the backcourt. And so to get some consistency there from beyond the arc, I think has been critical.
How big is this game for Texas, the one you're going to call a resume builder? I know they're going to be in that bubble area, in and out. When we get to Selection Sunday, this seems like it could get things going really good for the Horns.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's as big of an opportunity for Texas as it was for Vanderbilt when they beat Tennessee on the home court. Like, you get that marquee, quad one victory. It takes so much pressure off some of the other games because, look, they had a brutal first part of their schedule. I thought Texas was on their way to being 0-5, maybe 0-6. And and it would be understandable. But they're 2-4, and I think when you looked at that schedule, and Texas fans would look at that and say, "Hey, God, we're only 2-4 in conference play." Let me tell you, it's a pretty good 2-4. They got wins against Oklahoma, they got win against Missouri, and in a lot of ways, they haven't necessarily won a game maybe you don't expect them to win. They've been in the fight against A&M. They took Tennessee down to the wire. But now those are good wins. Now let's go get a great win. And this would be a great win and a rematch opportunity against Texas A&M. They played once earlier in the year. They kept A&M in check for the first half off the offensive glass. Second half, they got bullied, and see if they can play 40 strong minutes.
Calipari reminded us he's won 30 straight. We heard that twice.
Twice, yes.
They finally get their first conference win. When he took this job, people were like, oh, hell, if you get a really motivated Calipari, this could be trouble. Now Boogie Fland looks like he's out for the year. That's obviously a huge loss. Where do you see this Arkansas product going this year?
I know it's convenient of me to say, but I wasn't surprised that they beat Georgia, because when a player goes down of that caliber, there's something about that first 1 or 2 games where everybody just steps up their game, and you just rally behind that. Y'all seen it with Janai Broom out. Like, all of a sudden guys start playing out of their minds because of the increased opportunity. I don't know that that's sustainable. To me, one of the magic numbers for Arkansas is, can they get to 7 league wins? Like, if you're 7-11 in the SEC, as ugly as it's been, that might be enough for Cal and Arkansas to make the NCAA tournament. But I can't stress enough, as a player, and no matter how many people in Arkansas and everywhere else still criticizing their start to league play, and rightfully so, what matters is in that locker room. And I'm telling you right now, that one win, just the mood and the vibe in the training room and the weight room and the practice facility is so much more positive. And see if that can't lead to back-to-back wins for Arkansas, and find a way. When it's all said and done, I think that's probably going to be a disappointing season for Arkansas, but the story's not over. And if they get into the NCAA tournament, maybe he can switch gears. He's been upset the past couple years in March. Maybe he can play the role of upset.
Dane, is it too late for me to still get a good lot at River Gorge Ranch? Are you sold out yet?
You know what? Yeah, I've got the promo in the back. No, it's certainly not sold out.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do a January special for you, but it ends at 12 o'clock today. So if you want to just buy one over the phone, we better hurry.
Is this the new Hamptons in New York, Alice Beach? Is River Gorge? Is that the direction we're going with this?
Appreciate you asking. Hey, you can save a lot of money by not buying down there, and you buy up here on the mountaintop, right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Get you 1 or 2 acres, looking at the Tennessee River, low
Beautiful.
Taxes, low HOA dues. Come on, man.
Just do something with that Chattanooga traffic.
Terrible traffic for
Awful.
a town your size. The traffic is outrageous.
Hey, look, when you're sitting on the mountaintop and you can look down and see the interstate backed up, and you don't have to worry about a thing. You're just enjoying your cocktail, looking at the river and sunset.
Damn, sold.
Yeah, I'll be right on the phone with you. All right, he is Dane Bradshaw. See him 1:30 Saturday, Texas A&M at Texas on ESPN2 is where you'll see that game. Always appreciate the time, Dane. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, buddy. Take care. Dane Bradshaw with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.